Kane, I had an almost visceral reaction to reading your director's note. And the reason that I had that is that it could literally be my own story, almost down to the timeline. So I very much personally related to how you described what you went through, COVID, subsequent, the collective feeling after that.
Yeah.
And as I said, almost down to the timeline, and then even your thought process. Okay, how do we tell a story? Is my story worth it? That kind of stuff. So I just have to say, good on you for doing that.
Well, thank you. It certainly wasn't an easy decision from my part because I've been notoriously private all my life, and I've always been a very, a behind the camera kind of guy. Um, so at times I was wondering whether or not I'm crazy for even contemplating the idea of being the subject of the film because I thought, would anyone care? Will I look like a complete idiot? All these sorts of things ran through my head for months. And, I had a lot of doubt, to be honest, all the way through, you know. So, but I did think that this subject matter is something that, without having some kind of personal human connection to it, at face value, it can be deemed a boring topic. But that was 4 years ago when I first started this, so it wasn't really at the forefront of many people's thinking then. What and now, although the trailer doesn't reveal it a whole heap, some of the some of its key points are so timely now. Conversations that weren't happening really 4 years ago, or may have been fringe conversations, are now on the lips of everyone, and it's like, yeah, there's something to be said for that.
I agree. It's very, very timely. And as I said, I have got a hankering to watch the film. I just really want to watch it. It's like, I don't want to wait until it comes to Canberra. I think I need this film now. Why do you think people need this film now?
Well, I think the key thing that I like, for me, my only ambition was the film was to start conversation, not to tell people how to think or what to think, or or to push my personal opinions. Anything. It's just merely to start conversation, because I think the significance of it is that we're living in times where it's like, it's almost like not it's not encouraged to have open debate anymore. If you've got your position and I've got mine, we just, like, social media is part of the problem, in the sense that the algorithm is designed to create this echo chamber of thought of, well, the way I think is right and the way you think is wrong. And that's it. And we never actually have these sorts of heart to heart conversations about it. And it's no wonder that we're not progressing, or we're not resolving any of the problems in our world. And so for me, it's like that old fashioned thing that we don't seem to do much of these days, which is, I agree to disagree. And that is been demonized in many ways. So for me, the whole point of the film is to get people from all sides of the political spectrum in a room together and try and unify people on subjects that affect us all, and say, what do you think? What do you think? Because my view is not the only one. I'm not the be all and end all, and I don't profess to be an expert on any of this. And the film is very much, you get to be a fly on the wall of my experience. You get to see and learn at the same time as me, and then make the decision for yourself. That's the intent of the film.
And I could not disagree with that at all. I couldn't agree more, Kane. And again, this is why I really was moved to meet with you and have a conversation, because it's something that, as you say, has been demonized. And I wrote a piece recently, remembering sitting around our parents' tables at dinner time when they had dinner parties and they had friends come over, and we would listen to those conversations, and we were encouraged to listen to them. and people had different points of view, but they were still all friends and they all shook hands and had hugs at the end of the day. And I
Mm.
have been reflecting, like you, on just how far we have deviated from being able to have respectful conversations. And it is, in fact, how anything good was ever created and learned is through brainstorming and debating
Yeah.
and bringing all our experiences together.
Yeah.
When you were traveling around selecting people, because I loved in your director's note too that you talked about or your real need to not make it a divisive thing. It wasn't coming from a right or a left,
Mm.
things that I actually detest to describe human beings. How did that pan out? How did you've got some pretty cool people in this film, I can see. So how did you go about selecting that journey of who you would speak to and how you would
Uh,
convey that?
well, to be honest, a lot of the people that I met with came through from suggestion from other people, and I had no personal connection to anyone in the film whatsoever. They were all complete strangers to me, and that was part of the beauty of the experiment. And like you were saying before about, um, having open debate, I'm very much for. I don't like living in a world where we're told by government necessarily on what we can say, how we can think. That to me is, you know, that's not conducive to, growth or conducive to original thinking. That's really quite boring and unproductive. And uh, to me, on this journey, one of the key things that I found was that I met with so many people who I don't align 100% with politically. Okay. But you know what? We still ate together. We still had meals. We still had a cup of tea. And, and that was one of the key themes of the film. And I say it in there is that I believe that we have far more in common than I think we're ultimately led to believe. I feel like there's this little 10%, where we differ on social matters. But on the whole, I think just about every single one of us want largely the same thing. They want a life of some level of prosperity, of happiness, family, to be able to build something and to, experience all the wonder that the world has to offer. I think, we all eat, we all, do our business, all of the things that unify us and make us, and I guess that we have in common with each other. I feel like we just need to have this conversation a bit more about, hey, it's okay if you don't agree with me on everything. That's cool, but it takes the conversation maybe to spark something in the other person, to hear your story, to hear your version of the events that happen in your life, to maybe get a glimmer as to why you think that way. And that happened for me. And had certain events not taken place in my life, then I probably would never have gone on this journey. I may not have had the empathy or the heart to want to do it.
Hmm.
So I think, perspective does evolve depending on how willing you are to open your heart to hearing the stories of other people.
I agree. I agree, Kane. And that's been one of my greatest sadnesses personally, and looking at the way that the world is unfolding, is that we've been so divided on it's a handful of issues really, when, as you say, the majority of our life experience is in common. We want friendship, we want love, we want a safe place to sleep. We want to be able to wake up in the morning not feeling stressed in the first 5, 10, 15 minutes. We
Yeah,
want our families to be able to gather and join together. We want to be able to be creative or pursue the things that we love. They're very
100%.
simple needs.
Exactly.
And so, again, this ability, and I think as a society, we need to remember how to have respectful conversations and to bring our experiences, because there's such richness in that, isn't it? Like I can have an experience that has formed my view, but
Yeah,
until you hear what that experience is, you don't understand why I have formed that view.
exactly. I
Yeah,
agree 100%. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean, one of the key things that I'd like to just mention is about the film is that while we do touch on a whole bunch of these very timely and important subjects, the theme of the film is very much about optimism. It's about it's you're meant to feel, or was my intention anyhow, that when you get to the end of the film, you feel joy, you feel peace, you feel inspired to go into the next day of your life, and with and go into life with a bit more optimism. So that's one thing I want to strongly emphasize, because it's not just a film about criticisms of how shitty the system is. It's very solutions focused, and it's very focused on our collective humanity.
I love it. I love
Mm.
it. Well, I have no doubt that will happen because I felt that way just watching the trailer.
I'm glad.
And I was watching an interview and reading a couple of other pieces that you've done over the last 6 months, and where you were talking about it being time for you in your career to put your values ahead of your career.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit about that. I love that, and I feel that that's something that what's happened is it's become unpopular to even say what our values are. And we feel, driven to present or act or agree with certain things, or we can't get ahead, or we can't be acceptable. So, yeah,
Well, I think that when you work in, say, the entertainment industry in particular, um, there is this thing called cancel culture that still exists, and uh, I think it's very, very easy for, say, big name actors, you know, to be able to say what they really think and how they really feel, because they may already have an audience of millions of people, and they may have huge bank accounts and a whole long list of assets to back them up and give them security. But it's the people like myself and the crew, and the people who aren't on screen, who are critical to the creation of all this content. And I don't even like the word content. For me, it's I'm an artist, so you know, but the point being that you do feel to a certain extent that you have to be on your best behavior, that there is no room for error, that if you dare say one wrong thing, that there is no forgiveness in that. And that to me is a real significant problem, because I know for a fact that there are a large percentage of people out there who have convictions, but they're too afraid to say it because they're worried of what the ramifications may be. And uh, again, it comes back to that thing of freedom of speech, freedom of expression. I mean, as an artist, I don't want to be told how I can think or what I can say, for fear of. So I had to just sort of, and I feel like even though I consider myself someone to be a man of principle and conviction, I admit that for the last 20 years, I do have held back probably. And, to be honest, I haven't had that much to say except for what I put in my work, what I write. But I, people are fearful of what the repercussions will be for saying the wrong thing, and I think I will extend that same courtesy to you if you say the wrong thing, because I'm a human being and I know that I make a lot of mistakes, and if we are kidding ourselves that we don't all collectively make a whole lot of mistakes, and we in those instances would expect and hope for a level of forgiveness from other people, what kind of world, it's quite hypocritical, to think that way. Well, you said the wrong thing, so we're going to cut you from being able to work or provide for your family. But when the tables are turned and that person says something that's equally unpopular, they want to experience that forgiveness and grace. And to me, um, I think by kind of punishing and creating a culture where you can't verbalize or express yourself freely without fear of losing, say, your livelihood. And for artists, it's a terrible thing, because you know that's deprives society really of perspective and an artist's version of truth, telling them what they can say, what they can think. I'm totally against that. There can be ugly opinions and ugly words, but I'm all for hearing it, and all for, I'm a big boy. I can handle it. They're just words, and I think, quite honestly, everyone's a little bit soft these days.
and also everybody has feelings and thoughts, and I think collectively we are so suppressed, repressed.
Mm,
We have mental health issues going through the roof.
mm,
We're tiptoeing around because we're not sure what's politically correct, what's popular at
yeah,
the time, what we're allowed to agree with. It's a stressful way to live, isn't it?
yeah,
And if we can return to just remembering how to have respectful conversations, how to listen, how to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I think this is so refreshing, Kane. Again, you're hitting a time where I'm feeling there is an incredible appetite. People have had enough of being told what to think and what is okay to agree with or disagree with, or what you can
Yeah.
print, or where you can go, and those kind of things. You are traveling around the
Yeah.
country, sharing your Commonwealth documentary, which, as we can all hear, I can't wait to see. You're going to be in Canberra. Tell us a little bit about
Yep.
that.
On the 26th, coming up real soon now. We're doing we've done sort of a collaboration with ANU, and they have an incredibly fantastic cinema experience and set up on campus. One of the best in the entire state. Really world class theatre. And so we've done a collaboration with ANU, and there's going to be a handful of other really brilliant minds there, including Senator David Pocock, to have a chat, a light-hearted chat after the film. Come along, and tickets are moving pretty quick. If it sells out, we may look to do a second session. So, but I wouldn't count on it. So, if you do want to come along, now's a good time to grab a ticket. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's just 10 days from now is the official release date, and I have to. I'm starting this tour. Actually, as of this week, I'm doing a lot of travel for the next like 3 or 4 months to about 40 or more cities around Australia and New Zealand for a series of these special events where we screen the film, followed by a Q&A, and then once we sort of get through that, then the film will have a little bit of a life of its own in theatres without me being present. So yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Kane. As I've said, I can't wait to see it. I encourage all our readers and listeners to please come along, watch the trailer. I have no doubt that people will be clamoring for the ticket link. And look, I also am very aware that you and your family have funded the lion's share of this with the help of, as you say, non-affiliated other donors, which is a
Yep.
terrific way to set this up.
Yep.
So good on you for, for
We've
listening.
certainly got some blood, sweat, and tears involved here, and I was very adamant about not taking money from any kind of government body or organisation. I wanted it to have some level of like artistic purity, and it's not to say that if you do, that you'd lose your artistic integrity. But for a film like this of this nature, it was important to me that the source of finance came from a neutral place, that people understand that when I say that there is no agenda, that I truly mean it. It's just from my heart to yours. That's it.
Thank you so much, Kane, and thanks for taking the time. I'm going to let you get back to your beautiful family on the farm before you
Okay.
get ready to head out and hit the road.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and I can't wait to catch up with you in Canberra at the ANU very, very soon.
Okay. Thanks, Bernie.